go when your religion crumbles and your whole world turns upside down?
What do you do when your beliefs fail you?
How do you learn to trust God again?
Join us as we pick up the shattered pieces man-made religion left behind by taking up our cross and following Jesus.
Hello. Welcome to the Born Again Bakers podcast. I am Audrianna, and this is my beautiful co-host, Hannah. We are very excited for this episode. Today, we are just going to talk all about Hannah.
Yay!
She loves the hot seat.
It's the best.
We really want to share our stories because we feel like that's something that God really wants. Like, that's how he wants us to share him and glorify him. So we're just going to share our testimonies in individual episodes. So today's Hannah's. She's so thrilled.
I just love attention. You know that.
I guess we'll just jump in really quick. I'll give a little bit of an intro. Hannah and I are cousins. We are first cousins. My mom and her dad are brother and sister. So that is our relationship right off the bat. Where were you born?
I was born in Southern California. My dad he's retired now, a dentist, and we lived in the Antelope Valley. I was born in Palmdale. It's not a place that you want to claim, but we lived there until I was 4, and then we moved to Arizona following, I believe, our grandparents were the first people there, and then we were maybe second. But anyway, so we moved there when I was 4, and we lived in Mesa until I was 11, and we moved back to California, but we moved to the Santa Clarita Valley, and I stayed there from 6th grade through 10th grade, and then my parents decided to move back again for my junior year of high school, and I was not thrilled, to say the least. So I actually ended up taking my senior year online during my junior year, and I graduated right before my 17th birthday. I just was really tired of moving around, but I actually ended up sticking in the Phoenix area longer than that, even though I'm really just not a fan of Arizona.
I mean, same. I can relate to that. Yeah, no, those are really hard years to move.
They were hard years to move. Yeah, I didn't mind the move from Arizona to California in 6th grade. That wasn't too bad. So then when my parents, they actually propositioned me, and they said, we will give you the option. If you'd like us to stay till you graduate, we'll let you do that. And I took some time. It was really hard. I actually decided to let them move because I knew that my little brother was going to be starting school. He was going to be out of elementary school if I waited. And it's easier to move in elementary school than not. And I just didn't want him to have that bad experience. So I bit the bullet and I told my parents, let's just move. It'll be fine. And it was okay. It was not a great year, but I survived it. And my little brother ended up just flourishing. So it was worth it.
That's good. That is I would not have been that kind.
I didn't think I would either. So I must have just been God moving through me because he knew what we needed. Yeah.
Okay. So what was your life kind of like early childhood?
Okay. I am number 3 out of 4. And my mom loves the phrase, the squeaky wheel gets the oil. So I am the squeaky wheel of my family. I have other siblings who are just like, I have a sister who's way chiller than I am by nature. I'm just the peppy middle child I was the embodiment of middle child syndrome. Never really knew what I was, like where I fit in and all that. I have 2 really great parents. I grew up in the Mormon church, the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. We were really proud Mormons, and yeah, we did all the things. Every checklist item that you can check off is a Mormon. I'm trying to think. Baby blessing and baptism when you're 8 and patriarchal blessing and going to seminary and all the things. It was a pretty, I would say, stereotypical Mormon upbringing.
It's a busy way to grow up because it's like your whole life is the church. I would imagine it's the same in California. It's just like you have something all the time.
Yeah, it's kind of your personality. You don't really have time to do other things. I mean, I was involved in sports and whatever. I'm trying to think. I did cheer and show choir and all the things, but I also had early morning seminary, and we had mutual on Wednesdays, and we had, the summertime was like youth conference and EFY. And I mean, we really were busy all the time with church.
Oh, EFY. What a fun conversation that one would be.
We are going to have to do a whole episode on EFY and how it's changed, because it is not the EFY that I remember.
No, now it's actually called FSY, for the Strength of Youth, which is
that's
fascinating.
Yeah, I had
Yeah,
all
that's a
these
niche
EFY
experience.
experiences. I did like Santa Barbara EFY, I did Provo EFY. So yeah, I always loved it. I thought it was fun to get away, and you kind of feel like an adult for a week. You get to be with your friends and kind of make your own decisions. And I thrived in that. I was definitely the child that did not like being told what to do. So I very much thrived in the environment of being my own adult, for sure.
Yeah, I can relate to that. I didn't like being told what to do. I was very obedient, but I didn't love to be told what to do.
Yes, my dad has told me, if I just told you what to do, you were going to push back. But if I just said to you, I know that you know what the right thing is, now make the right decision, and that you would make the right decision, but it had to be on your own terms. I'm sure I was a joy to parent.
Well, you're a joy to know now, so it doesn't really matter.
No, I feel like it gave me personality. It's good.
Yeah. It makes, you know what? I was very similar, and it just makes you fun. It keeps them on your toes, you know?
Yeah, it builds really good character, and it gives you a great sense of humor.
It does. That's why we think we're entertaining enough to have a podcast.
We're the only two people entertained by this.
I hope not. Maybe. So you graduated high school early, and then did you go straight into the singles ward, or did you do like a year until you turned 18? How did you do that?
No, I actually went straight into the singles ward because, so I wanted to go off to school. I wanted to be, the theater kid in New York. Like I wanted to go to NYU. I had plans for my life. And my parents obviously were not on board with me going to New York as a 17-year-old. So my options were, you can stay in Arizona and go to ASU or a community college, or you can go up to Utah and go to either BYU or UVU, because I had a sister and an aunt up there. And so I was like, well, I don't want to stay in Arizona. I'll go up to Utah. So I went up to Utah at 17 and spent, how long was I up there? I started the fall semester and I came home in like January. I was kind of over it. I actually went to UVU my first semester. I loved UVU. And then I wasn't able to go to BYU the first semester because I was so young and I hadn't even applied. So my parents were like, well, BYU's cheaper. So if you get into BYU for the next semester, you have to go. And if not, you can stay at UVU. I think it's different now. Now they give you in-state tuition for having good grades. They did not back then. So it was out-of-state tuition. It wasn't as expensive as these Ivy League colleges, but it was still a lot. My parents had 3 kids in college. So if I got into BYU, I had to go, and I really did not want to go to BYU. My whole life, it just felt like the epitome of that like Molly Mormon, it was like grating on my soul to think about having to go to BYU. So I very casually turned in my BYU application. I put very little effort into this application and I got in. And I'm told it's harder to get in the winter than it is in the fall. So I'm not sure how that happened, other than God. So I got into BYU and I spent about 6 weeks there, and then I withdrew. I hated it. There wasn't an undergrad that I wanted there. I just wasn't interested in anything that they were offering me, and I just didn't feel good about being up there anymore. So I went into the office, I withdrew, and the lady looked at me like I was crazy. She's like, are you sure this is going to show up as views on your transcript? And I was like, no, I'm sure. And then I called my parents on the way out, and I was like, hey, I withdrew from college, and I'm coming home. And my dad's like, okay, I'll be up there this weekend. Start packing.
That was so nice of him. He was so quick.
Yeah. I mean, I was still a minor, so it's not like they probably didn't love that I was that far away from them at that age anyway, to be fair. So they were okay with it. And then I came home and I didn't know what I wanted to do. So I started taking some community college classes and I got a job part-time in a dental office, like cleaning. And then I started going to the singles ward in Arizona where I met my husband.
How long had you been going to the singles ward when you met him?
Oh, that's a good question. I had been home from school I came home and I think I said January, February, somewhere in there. And I met him in August of that same year. I was already 18, okay. Just to clarify. Doesn't really make me sound that much older.
You know who you're talking to, so.
But I was legal at that point. I mean, in our family, we have to clarify whether or not you were of legal age to be married, so.
Because I was 17 when I met my husband.
And you weren't the only one that was getting engaged that young.
No, that's so funny. Okay, so how long did you date before you guys got engaged?
We dated for 3 months and then we were engaged for 4, so 7 months total. That sounds crazy. We're both just no nonsense. And I think we both actually have a pretty good judge of character. So it was kind of just one of those things where we both we knew pretty quickly. And like I knew by the 3rd date that I was going to marry him. And I didn't tell him that, but I knew that I was going to.
We talked wedding dates on our 3rd date, so I can relate to that.
Anyone listening who's not Mormon does not relate to this.
No. But it is very normal and family, like the family culture. Our grandma was 17 when they got married. That was like it was more normal then to get married that young. And so we were everyone just got married really young. That was just what we were used to. So
yeah, for sure. Which is crazy looking back. Now I'm like, you're a baby, you don't know what you're doing. You have no idea how big of a commitment that is. But it was absolutely, looking back, it was always going to be him because it's such a God-ordained thing. Now looking back, I can see all of it and how it all played out.
It's crazy to look back as like a full-blown adult. Like you have kids, you have like 10, 15 years of marriage on your belt, and you're like, yeah, that was God because that probably shouldn't have happened the way that it did.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a massive decision. And I had cold feet for sure. I was, that was a big decision. And I didn't even realize, you can't realize until you get married how big of a decision that actually was. The longer you're married, the more you realize how big of a decision that is.
So you basically dated for what? You just told me the number and it left my brain.
7 months from the time we met to the time we got married.
How long was it until you had your first baby?
We got married in 2012, and our first baby came in 2014. So we had been married a little over 2 years when he came. So we waited about a little over a year. So I was in school. I went to school for respiratory therapy, and I planned it. I was like, if we get pregnant now, I will have him right after I graduate. It's going to be great. I forgot to take into account that I have a family history of premature labor. That means I actually gave birth on the day of my finals. So I woke up at like 3 a.m. and my water had broke and I could not go take my finals.
I didn't even know that.
Yeah, it was crazy. My brother and his wife came to the hospital. My parents were out of town because he was 5 weeks early. He was exactly 35 weeks and my water just broke. In the middle of the night, I was sleeping. I heard like a pop and I went to move. And before I even got out of bed, I called my mom and I was like, I think my water just broke. And she's like, okay, well, I'm not home. They actually they got there so fast. A 6-hour car drive took them 4 and they barely missed it. They missed it by like 20 minutes. It was intense. Oh, but my brother and his wife were in town, so they came and I'm in the hospital. I'm 21 at this point. And my husband is like, she's supposed to graduate today. And my brother looks at the nurse. She's like, college. She's supposed to graduate college today. Because I looked all of 18.
That's so funny.
It was so awkward. And then the dean of my school actually came to see me after I gave birth. And I had a 4.0. I had the highest grade point average in my class. And she's like, I know you can't take this final. So I decided to just average out the final score of everybody. She's like, I know you would have gotten a really good score, but I took the average of the class and I gave that to you. And if it was going to drop your GPA down, I would have had you take the final, but it kept you with your 4.0. And so she just let me graduate. It was really, really kind.
That is kind. That's actually amazing.
Yeah, she was incredible. And then I did have to study for all of the tests that you have to take to be registered. I had 2 tests I had to take. They're huge tests, and it takes a long time to study for them. And so my mom would just come over and like snuggle the baby while I would go. It was fine. It worked out.
Okay, so then how old was he when you had your second?
So he was 19 months. So they are only about a year and a half apart. And then I had my daughter, and her brother are 22 months apart. And then my last 2 are just over 2 years apart. They got slightly bigger gaps each time. So I went from a year and a half to 22 months to 26 months. So my oldest was 5 when my youngest was born. So I had 4 kids in 5 years, not quite 6 years.
Crazy. It was a
It
crazy
was
time.
crazy. Looking back, it makes me tired. I don't know how I did that. But they're all super close and it's so fun. So now my oldest is 11 and my youngest is 5.
And they are the sweetest kids.
And we both have really big personalities with really strong opinions, and we very much created 4 children who are even more stubborn than the 2 of us are and louder somehow.
So you had your last baby in 2020. I know that
Yep.
because we had babies at the same time, almost every time.
And my last 3 and your first 3 are all basically the exact same age, like down to a couple weeks. And same gender. That was fun.
It was fun. I didn't even realize though, my first 2 were 19 months apart too,
Were they really?
which is just yes, just funny parallels between our kids.
Yeah.
That's actually crazy how in sync our kids were. You had your last baby in 2020, and that was just a crazy year, I think, all around, but it was particularly crazy for you.
Yeah, it really was. Well, first she felt like a miracle to me. She was a miracle to me because my husband was very much not ready to have another baby. And I was ready, I was not quite ready either. And so I had been kind of praying about, when should we have another baby? And I'm actually I'm just sitting there with my kids watching them play, and I hear this voice pop into my head, and it says, "You're going to have another baby." It literally felt so audible in my head, and I was not even thinking about it at the time that I like looked around for a second. I literally said back in my head, well, if that's true, God, then you're gonna have to work on my husband because he doesn't want another baby right now. And lo and behold, I find out I'm pregnant, and I go to the doctor, and I got pregnant that exact day that I was told I was gonna have a baby. And I had told the doctor the date, and he was like, yeah, that's exactly, I'm 100% sure that's the day you got pregnant. And so it was pretty wild. So I knew that she was coming from God. Like, God really wanted me to have this baby, and it was pretty crazy. When I was 8 months pregnant, I ended up really sick. I thought I just had the flu. I'm just throwing up nonstop. I'm super dehydrated. And of course, these things only happen on the weekend. So I can't get a hold of the doctor. They're like, you just need to go to the emergency room. There's nothing I can do for you. And so I go to the emergency room, and I'm very dehydrated. They put, I want to say it was like 7 bags of fluid in me or something. It was a lot. I was really dehydrated. And then they put fluid in me, and I felt really good. Initially the doctor wanted me to stay because he's like, your heart rate's really high. I'm like, my heart rate's really high because I'm really pregnant. And my heart rate's just high when I'm pregnant. But he made me stay, and then I tested positive for COVID, and it was crazy. My room got shut down. Everyone's putting on all of their gear. And I'm like, I don't feel sick. I actually feel fine. But every time I stand up, my heart rate goes up, partly because they won't let me go home. And if you go home against medical advice, insurance doesn't cover anything. So I'm calling my husband. He's home with 3 other kids. I'm like, they're not going to let me leave. I have to stay. He's like, I don't know, what do you want me to do? I have to work. And he's like, all right, well, I guess there's nothing we can do. So I'm staying, and I'm just sitting in this hospital for 2 days. I was stressed about not being able to go home, and I felt fine, and everyone's treating me like I have leprosy. The nurse would come in once a day to check on the baby, and she would come down from labor and delivery. And whatever nurse got chosen to come up to my room had to go straight home. She wasn't allowed to go back down into labor and delivery. And so no one wanted to go in there. And I would order my food, and it would sit outside my door for 2 hours, and I could hear nurses arguing over who has to go in there to give it to me. By the time I get it, it's like cold, the popsicle's melted, and I'm miserable just sitting there. And finally the doctor's like, well, I don't think your heart rate's gonna come back down. I'm like, yeah, I don't think so either. Can I go now? He's like, yeah, I guess we'll just let you go. You're fine. And I had her just a couple weeks later. I think it was 2 weeks later. I go into labor, and they're wanting me to put on a mask in there. They're like, your husband can't leave. Once he comes into the building, he's not allowed to leave the building again. This is all the COVID protocol. And they were extra cautious with me because I had already had COVID a couple weeks before. And so one of the nurses is like, you need to put a mask on. And then another nurse comes in and whispers, she's like, they legally can't make you wear a mask while you're in labor. I hope you know that. And I was like, thank you so much. You just don't know what you don't know. And so I'm ripping that mask off, and he's not allowed to leave. So I'm like, well, you better be feeding him then if you're not even going to let him go. Like, they wouldn't even let him go to the car to get a car seat. And you're not allowed to leave the hospital without a car seat. So they're like, sir, you can't come in here with her until you have your car seat with you, because once you enter the building, you're not leaving until you're leaving with the baby. It was crazy. So I have this baby, and then the nurse is trying to put a mask back on me. And I'm like, you're putting a mask on me. This baby just came out of my body. What do you think she's going to get from me that she doesn't already have? It was actually crazy. The logic went out the window. And keep in mind, I went to school for respiratory therapy, where you're learning about breathing and how masks work. And I'm like, none of this is making any sense. The world had gone mad. Then finally the next day, a pediatrician came in and was like, this is the luckiest baby in the hospital. She has the immunity to COVID. And I was like, finally, someone with a voice of reason. Yeah, she does. We're fine. And my baby was fine. She was early, because all my babies were early. And we went home, and nobody came to visit us. It was such a strange time in the hospital. I actually really enjoyed that part. I'm not going to lie to you. But nobody came to visit me. Like, I just had like this month to myself with the baby. And then my husband, that was the only time he ever got paternity leave. I mean, you got 5 months paternity leave.
That's amazing.
It was incredible. And so he took it, but it took 4 months, and we were both ready for him to go back to work. Men need purpose.
Fair enough.
But it was really great. I felt like I got to bond with my last baby a lot more than with number 2 and 3, because I didn't have other kids. I could just take her and go nurse, and I knew someone else had the other kids. So that part was actually really great. But all of this treatment of COVID and me, I was really confused by all of it. And I had so many questions. And I had really been praying for a while at that point to understand how to have, what Mormons would call personal revelation. I just didn't understand how people were getting it. I didn't know how to separate out my thoughts from the Holy Ghost thoughts. And I had been really studying it and deep diving it. And I knew that I had an experience with telling me that I was pregnant. I knew that somehow God had spoken to me. And I think I just really craved letting that happen again. How did I do that? You know what I mean? So during COVID, my husband's job went remote 100%. And he got permission from his boss to move permanently, even when people were going to go back, that he could just stay remote permanently so that we could move. Because we had been wanting to leave Arizona. We just weren't really in love with it. And so we ended up moving to Eastern Idaho, because we actually just really wanted our kids to grow up in a super Mormon environment and have like that quintessential, childhood of the 90s. Idaho Falls kind of felt like we were going back in time a little bit. It's just like a little quieter, a little safer, and we could get like a much nicer house out there. It made sense. My husband grew up in the Pacific Northwest, so he loved being up in the trees and all the things. So that's where we ended up going, and we both felt really good about it. It worked out. And then we get up to Idaho, and we start seeing the differences in culture within the Mormon church, which was fascinating. Our bishop at the time was terrified of COVID. He came in to say hi to us when we moved in, and he stood at the door, like against the wall with his mask on, 30 feet from us, probably. Maybe that's dramatic. 20 feet, whatever. He's like up against the wall. I'm like, you can come in. He's like, no, I'm good. I'm good. Like, okay, this is not really how I pictured an Idaho bishop. Like, this is a free state for COVID. And then we moved in right before Halloween. So we go to our neighbors across the street. We're like, hi, we're your new neighbors. We're so excited to meet you. And they're like, oh, you're in a different ward than us. I'm sorry. What? And that was it. That was literally the conversation. They never in almost 5 years talked to us again. It was crazy. Because our ward boundary was our street. So everyone across the street from us was a different ward, and people on our side of the street were all very friendly to us. But the people across the street, literally, if I would wave, they would like close their garage door. It was crazy. That
is wild.
It was wild. I'm like, oh, okay, that's interesting. There was just like a strange divide. And so
there must have been like interwar drama.
Yeah, I think we were just really hoping that it was going to be much more conservative with COVID and all the things. And it was, for the most part, it really was. We felt like we had more freedoms up there, but not as many as we were expecting. So all of these are annoyances, but they're not keeping us from church. You know, we're going when we can, if when it's opened up, and we're listening online when it's only online, whatever, all the things. We're doing the right thing. We really were like quintessential Mormons. I was really involved and in my calling. I was in activity days. I loved it. And then I was teaching primary. My husband was always involved in young men's. He always had some kind of calling in young men's. I think the whole time we were in the church. So anyway, all this leads up, and then the COVID vaccines roll out. And I was gonna go get it because the prophet said, he didn't say, but he alluded to us needing to go get this vaccine. It felt like the church was saying it without saying it. You were really, very much feeling pressured. You know, they're coming out with talks about, well, if the prophet crushes his water bottle this way, I'm going to crush my water bottle this way. Oh, look, here he is on TV getting this vaccine. We should go get it too. So I knew what my husband was feeling about vaccines. I, at this point, also was agreeing with him about regular vaccines, but I was very much struggling internally with, I really want to listen to this prophet, but I'm also really not sure that I agree with this specific vaccine. And I wasn't really sure what to do, and I was actually leaning towards going to get it. And my husband, who for all of the other points in our marriage, pretty much lets me decide what we're gonna do. When I'm like, hey, we're not getting our kid that vaccine, he's like, cool, you do you. It seems like you researched it. We're good. I mean, we'll talk about it, but it's not like he's a controlling husband at all. And he really was stern, and he said to me, this is my line in the sand. And you are not gonna go get this. Like, I'm not going to allow you to go get this. This is it for me. And yeah, that was my face. I was like, oh, he's really
Like, oh, you really feel strongly about this.
yes, like he really felt strongly. This was his line. And I was not gonna cross that line as his wife. And so he's like, you need to wake up, you need to do your own research, and you need to start praying about this. So that's what I did. I think that was the first truly honest prayer I had ever said with any kind of question about the church. And, you know, they teach you doubt your doubts. I just would always push those thoughts out. It never had even occurred to me that there was anything outside of Mormonism. It was either Mormonism or atheism. Those were my two options in my mind. And so I'm praying, and I literally was just like, God, I don't know what to do here. I don't know what the answer is. I really want to follow what you're saying. And I feel like the prophet is telling me something different from what I think that I need to be doing. And I don't know how to reconcile the two. And I said a prayer asking God to show me if he was actually a prophet. And so all it did was open up a door for me to ask what's true and what's not true here. And so I found Facebook groups, and it was all people who had similar questions that I did. It's all these Mormons who are just not sure where to go from here because COVID felt like an awakening in some ways to whether or not the church was true. A lot of people were asking questions at this point because people were very divided on this issue. And so
because how do you reconcile, sorry to interrupt, how do you reconcile your personal revelation, which the church itself, that particular prophet was really hammering down personal revelation at the time. So how do you reconcile when the prophet and the organization of the church is saying something that opposes your personal revelation? So many people had questions because there's no logical way to reconcile that.
Yeah, that was exactly it. And I had been already trying to find my own personal revelation through all of this. And I'm feeling really strongly one way, but the prophet is really feeling strongly this way. So this really just opened me up to start questioning things. And I was still going to church, just quietly questioning. I'm not involved in the Facebook groups. I'm just kind of seeing what other people are saying about it. And so God led me down this path of digging into Mormon history. And in doing so, and because of these Facebook groups, honestly, now looking back, it's pretty bad actually, but it's a logical conclusion that if something is going wrong in the church, my conclusion was, well, where did the church go wrong? Because it must have started out true. I still very much believed in the church. I still very much believed in Joseph Smith and the Restoration and all of it. And so in my mind, the logical conclusion is, okay, we need to go back in church history and figure out who are prophets and when the church became corrupted. Because that would be a logical conclusion as a Mormon anyway, if the church is capable of being corrupted, right? If you believe that it happened in the Restoration once, then it's not that big of a leap to believe that it had happened again. So this is where my mind is going. And I start digging into these groups that are, Joseph Smith was true and Brigham Young took the church and destroyed it and slowly changed the actual truth. So all of my free time is spent learning about church history and trying to defend Joseph Smith. And there's like a whole subsection of people who believe that Joseph Smith never practiced polygamy, and it goes really deep. And so we kind of slowly stopped going to our ward and started going with these people who believed the same things and had similar questions. And we would open up our Book of Mormon, we'd open up our Bible, and we would just have good discussions. And at the time, I didn't think there was anything wrong with that. It's just, we're trying to figure out what we believe and what we don't. Occasionally, we would go back to church and I'd be like, no, there's just nothing here. Like, I'm feeling nothing. And at the time, I'm very much emotion-based because that's what Mormonism teaches you, right? If it's a good burning feeling, it's true. And if it's a bad feeling or whatever, then it's from the devil. So this is the only way that I know at the time how to discern what's right and what's wrong while trying to pick through church history. And I spent about a year doing that. I slowly deconstructed the main LDS church. And then I really had deconstructed to just like fundamentalist Mormon, not like polygamy, but just the basic teachings of, everything's a conspiracy theory at this point, right? Because what's true and what's not, it was very confusing. And now it makes me sound like a crazy person, probably, but it made sense at the time.
There's a lot of people that went that way.
There are a lot of people that go that way and they don't talk about it. There's actually a very interesting subsect of Mormonism anyway that gets into the Adam God theory and multiple moral probation. And when you talk about these with mainstream LDS people, though, they don't even know what you're saying. They don't believe in any of it. So you kind of sound like a crazy person, even though there's a lot that you can dig into with the church. And there's evidence. The one thing the church does really well is write everything out. So you can just dig into church history and read things from prophets and whatever forever. And it's confusing because you have all these prophets saying, this is scripture, I'm speaking to you. And if I'm speaking to you, that means it's scripture. And then you have new prophets saying, no, it's only if we all sign our name to it that it's scripture. But the old prophets are saying something different. So you really have a wide range of what people believe in the Mormon church, because some believe in all of the prophets and what they've taught. Some believe very much just in the modern prophets. Some believe only in what the older prophets taught. So it's a little bit confusing. So I spent about a year digging into this, meeting people, trying to learn everything that I can. And at the same time, I joined this co-op for homeschool with my kids. And we're in East Idaho, but the co-op is at a Christian church. And the Christian church just allows the co-op to use it for free. They're just really generous with their building. And the Mormon church doesn't allow you to do co-ops in their buildings. So anyway, the majority of the women that go to this co-op are all Mormon. I'm there, my kids are in their classes. I have my baby in the nursery, and there's just a bunch of moms in there hanging out with their babies while their kids are in class. And I meet this other mom, and we have kids all basically the same age, and we just start chatting. We really hit it off. We're just both very much into the same crunchy mom thing, and we start chatting, and she's like, I'd love to have you guys over. So I go over to her house for a play date, and I realize this mom is not Mormon. And that really scared me. I did not just let my kids hang out with anybody, right? I didn't realize how insulated my community was until that moment when I walked into this woman's home and she very clearly was not Mormon. She was very clearly some kind of Christian. And she's so gracious. She welcomes me in. She explains her family rules. We leave the doors open and we don't allow a boy and a girl in the same room, like just the same rules that we had at our house. And it really struck a chord with me because I didn't realize that I could be in a home of someone other than a Mormon who had the same rules and values. That was new to me. And it's just a beautiful family. Her husband was great. All of them were so wonderful. They were so kind. And so we became really close as friends. And I remember someone really close to me being like, you need to be careful with her. She's a Baptist. And she went to a Grace Baptist church, which I later learned is just like a non-denominational church. But I didn't know that at the time because her church said Grace Baptist. So anyway, so they were like warning me about being friends with her. I know. I was like, what's wrong with Baptists? I don't know. So we're just chatting, and I'm sure it became clear to her that I was having questions. So we start talking about it. I'm being really open with her because she's not Mormon, and it felt like a safe place to voice concerns and what I was feeling about the history of the church. I'm like, this is what I'm learning. and I'm just really confused by all of it. And she tells me about Awana, which, if anyone is listening and doesn't know, Awana is like a Wednesday night church program for kids. You go, you memorize your like verse for the week, and they play games with the kids. They read the Bible. It's a great program. So she's telling me about Awana, and oh, your kids would have a great time. It's just Bible. There's nothing scary. You believe in the Bible, right? And so why don't you just come and we'll go and do our own Bible study together while the kids are doing Awana? And I'm like, that
That
sounds
was
great.
like so bold of her
It really
and
was.
so cool that she did that.
Yeah, she's incredible. Yeah, I just love her. And so we open up the Bible recap by Tara Lee, and we're doing that together. So it's just, you're reading the Bible chronologically. So rather than starting from beginning to end, you're reading it in the order that it was written, because the Bible's not 100% chronological, right? Like you have the Gospels, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, and they're rewriting some of them the same way. So you're reading like bits and pieces, but you're finishing the Bible in a year. And then to go along with the reading plan for the year, there is like a 5-minute podcast that you listen to, and it's all about who God is in the Bible. That's it. It's 5 minutes. It didn't even really seem that different from what I knew. So we did the Bible recap together, and I would literally bring my Joseph Smith translation with me. And I'm sure she's probably thinking she's way in over her head with this. She's, never been a Mormon. She doesn't know every answer, but she was so amazing. And every time I had a question, if she didn't know, she'd be like, I actually don't know the answer to that. I will find out, and I'll get back to you. And she always did. She wrote things down, and she always answered it like, that's an interesting interpretation of that scripture. Let me teach you what our interpretation of the scripture is. That was really it. She was not pushing me in any way, and I very much appreciated her. And so that was my first real exposure into the Bible. But I'm still very much believing in Joseph Smith at this time. So I'm reading other books, and I read a book that I no longer recommend because he turned out to be a wolf in sheep's clothing. However, I read his book, and it's a Mormon who turned Christian. And I read this book, and I realized the reason that it was powerful to me was actually the pastor who was speaking to him in the book. It's not anything that he said. I actually didn't really care for anything that he said. I really liked the pastor's message, which was the gospel message. And I had never heard the Christian gospel before. So it's this missionary, and he's trying to convert a pastor. A Baptist preacher shares the gospel with him in the meantime and explains how the Old Testament fits in with the New Testament. So he's explaining why we had the laws in the Old Testament and the people of Israel and the temple. And then when Jesus came, how he fulfilled the law. We no longer need prophets. The prophets were there to point to Jesus. And then when Jesus died on the cross, the temple curtain was torn in two, because the temple curtain was the barrier between you and God. And Jesus separates the barrier. And we no longer need temples because of that. And we no longer need prophets because of that. And Jesus died on the cross for this. And now we live in the new covenant. And he just explains the gospel message in this book. And I read this part, and I literally put the book down, and I run into the bathroom where my poor husband is taking a shower. And I like bang on the bathroom door. And I'm like, the Book of Mormon is not true. And he's like, what did you just say? And I was like, it's the Bible. The Bible makes sense. The Book of Mormon's not true. I'm like screaming it. And he's like, okay, hold on. And so he like gets out of the shower, and I'm just like trying to explain it to him. And he's like, what? Okay, he's not fully understanding what I'm saying. I'm sure I'm saying it not in the right way. But it just, after a year at least of digging in to church history and trying to figure out what's true and what's not true, and like he said and she said, and trying to read the Book of Mormon, and at this point I don't even think I had dug into the false parts of disproving the Book of Mormon or anything. I was just trying to prove that it was true. And in the meantime, I read the Bible and discovered that the Book of Mormon didn't matter at that point, and the church history didn't matter at that point, because the gospel hasn't changed. And anyway, this changed everything for me.
My favorite is when you do when you reenact yourself. The Book of Mormon's not true. It gets me every time. I love it.
It really was that dramatic.
This is my favorite. So you were trying to prove Mormonism as true. You're trying to prove the Book of Mormon, and accidentally you stumble upon the truth of the gospel of Jesus Christ, which is not necessarily what we were taught is the gospel of Jesus Christ as a Mormon. So then you make all these great connections, and it is as dramatic as it sounds, because it changes your life. Like in just an instant, it can finally click, even though you might have heard it multiple times. it clicks in a second, and all of a sudden it all makes sense.
Yeah.
What happened next?
So my husband is still like not sure what, what he believes. He doesn't have time to dig into it the way that I do. I think our homeschooling probably suffered that year. I was really digging into to Mormon history instead, and reading the Bible and all the things, reading the Book of Mormon, and like truly trying to prove that it's true, because I think just the idea of it not being true was so earth-shattering that I don't know that I would have accepted it right away. So I very much needed to do my own digging and very slowly deconstruct, because I really did believe it that strongly. And I had, at this point, I knew some of the, the negative side of it. I read the CES letter and all the things, and none of that made me leave. I just was like, oh, well, there's got to be an explanation for it. Or like, yeah, that's looking pretty bad. But, you just kind of can dismiss things when you want something to be true so badly. But the more I dug in and the more I was just praying about it, and I would cry often to God at night and just bare my soul, like, I don't know what the truth is. I'm trying so hard to find the truth, and I just don't know which pieces of Mormon history are true and which aren't. It was very overwhelming, and I would just cry out, I just don't want to go to hell. Just don't let me go to hell, God. If you just do anything for me, I just want to be with you, and whatever that truth is, I will take the truth. Like, just give me the truth, and that's what I will accept, but I don't know what that is. He was so gentle about it, because I could not have lost all of it at once. If I had lost the entire church at one time, I don't know that I would have ever wanted God again, because I didn't know there was another option to God. I just was always taught that Christianity was one thing. And then after reading the Bible and being around other Christians, I realized those were lies. And that's not the Christianity that I knew. It had nothing to do with what I knew as a child about Christianity.
I think growing up, because you're taught when people leave the church, it's because they want to sin or they were lazy learners. And it really discounts how hard it is to question your core beliefs. It is excruciating.
Yeah, mentally exhausting, and it's so painful, and you really have to relearn everything that you ever thought was true. So we really are questioning your reality at that point, because I was so wholeheartedly in it, and I wasn't expecting the answer that I got at all.
Yeah, and it hits you like a brick wall, and it's really disorienting. I was telling someone it's kind of like there's no floor.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I literally felt dizzy at some points. I actually started feeling dizzy the moment that I was like, is he actually a true prophet? Because I had never even thought about it before. And I actually felt like the floor had been taken out from underneath me, that I even was willing to ask that question. So I don't think people give enough credit to people who deconstruct Mormonism, because it's not this easy decision. It was such a painful, long process. And I knew the risks that I was taking by even having questions, because it ruins relationships permanently. So I was doing it a lot of it very quietly, and some of it I was being pretty bold about, like, hey, the church history is not what we thought it was. And I really thought that I would get people to follow along and be like, yeah, you're right. But people just weren't ready to hear it. So it very much damaged a lot of relationships. And by the time I was fully out, and I knew that I was never going to go back, because that took me about a year to decide that I was done. And I knew that there was no reconciling it. I wrote my parents a letter, and I texted it to them. And I specifically did it that way because I knew that the reaction wasn't going to be great. I knew that there were just going to be things that were said if it was going to be said in person or on the phone. And I said that in the letter, like, I just want to give you room to react and then respond when you're ready, because I don't want to damage that relationship forever. And I think that if we have this conversation in person, it probably will.
I feel like it's always safer to give people time to process.
Yeah.
Because it's a really big thing from both ends. It's really painful when you are active and believing in the church to watch somebody choose something different. It's really painful and really scary, but it's the same, probably more scary. As someone who's been on both sides, it's probably more scary to be the person leaving, because everyone else gets to maintain their full support system. And you have to question every relationship if you're the one leaving, because it shows you who actually cares and who doesn't.
Yeah, we truly lost friends and family for sure over it. And we learned a lot. Sometimes, sometimes we were just coming on too strong because we were just so excited about what we had learned and felt like it was life changing. And we've learned a lot along the way about, what you should and shouldn't say and when to say it. But ultimately, the gospel in the Bible, it says the gospel will divide families. And if you're not ready to hear it, then it doesn't sound like anything special. So you really take your time before you just jump out and leave, because you know what it's going to do, because you've seen other people in your life do it and you know what the consequences are. Now, granted, I'm glad looking back that you don't quite know how bad it's going to be and how isolating it's going to feel, because I think it would make the decision even harder. So the longer I'm out, the more I know what a sacrifice it was to leave for Jesus. And I would do it again. I mean, there's no question in my mind I would do it again. But every time something comes up with family or friends, you're just reminded of how different your life is. My life doesn't look anything like it did. I don't even live in Idaho anymore. I am not the same person that I was when I found Jesus.
It changes you in so many ways, but it is amazing how God can redeem all of that brokenness, because it does feel like your world shatters, and then he just very gently picks up all the pieces and puts you back together again like Humpty Dumpty.
Yeah, and you can see how most people who leave Mormonism end up atheists, because they don't know that there's another option out there, which breaks my heart. And they're not choosing another God because they don't trust the Bible, because you're taught not to trust the Bible. So I was really blessed that I found an amazing church up in Idaho, and there were several women who had done what I had done by, leaving, and they had Bible study class just for women who have left the church. I mean, men could have gone, but it was all women. And it really became like my therapy session for a couple of years. And it was just a really great resource to have these incredible Christian women who know what it's like to come out on the other side and can walk you through, what the Bible teaches and what Mormonism teaches. Because for a long time, probably for a solid year, I'd wake up every morning and I would have to take a deep breath, because I'm like, okay, you did it. You really did leave the church, because it felt like such a massive thing. Part of me felt so guilty for doing it, just for our pioneer heritage and for the shame it brings family, and it's heavy. So, I mean, every morning I would wake up and be like, hey, you left the church. That's a reality. And these are your reasons for having done that. And it took a long time to be like, hey, is that my Mormon brain or is that my Christian brain? I don't know if that scripture is coming from the Book of Mormon or from the Bible. So these women that I met were just incredible in helping me, disentangle and learn the Bible so that I can know what's true and what's not. God really did. He really did give me an incredible community, because I could have ended up in a much different situation.
His provision, I mean, he really thinks ahead. It just proves how all-knowing he is, because he puts you in the exact right position every time. Even if it doesn't feel like it, you can then look back and see all the little pieces fall into place. He's so cool.
He really is. The details are absolutely insane. So we left and officially started going to a Christian church in the end of 2022. And then we left Idaho in April of 2025, this year. And I mean, between then and when we left, we're not the same people. My husband since, found Jesus. My children, just nothing about us. Our marriage is incredible now, where, it wasn't always the greatest. And I parent in a different way. I have confidence that I didn't know that I could have. And I just have a different love for people that I didn't know that I could have. And he took the bitterness that I felt towards, when you come out, you feel like you've been robbed. People who are doing wrong, knowing they're doing wrong. That's a wolf in sheep's clothing. When you are proclaiming to be something and you know that you're not doing that behind the scenes, I'm not okay with that. And I think that's righteous anger. But I don't have any bitterness towards Mormons themselves. I don't have any bitterness towards my family, my parents, for having raised me in it, because they were doing what they believed was the right thing to do. And, it could have been worse. I could have grown up in a much different house and made much different choices in my life. But at least being in the Mormon church, now maybe I didn't make the right choices for the right reasons. I might have been doing it because I felt guilted, but it at least was keeping me from great sins in my life or anything like that. So I can appreciate it for that, but it definitely took it took work. It took a lot of work to get to that point. And I really did have to leave Idaho in order to be able to have that love, because we didn't really have neighbors that would talk to us anymore. None of those kids would play with my kids. They run the city there. And I mean, everything about the city and their culture is steeped in the Mormon church. So it was really hard to stay there. The Christian community there, while amazing, is not very large. And it was becoming very apparent that my children were outgrowing it. They wanted to be able to do things like, my son is in a robotics team here, and there just weren't options like that there in Idaho Falls. There weren't great co-ops and things for my kids to do. And then we decided to find the most Christian place we could. So thank you, Audrianna, because Oklahoma was not even on my radar.
It's my dream place to move. So we like chatted it up to try to convince them, but then they got there before us, which is just
Yeah,
rude.
you're like, just at least look into it. It just became really clear that that's where we wanted to go. And it was very prayerful. But anyway, that was a really long-winded way to say God is in the details. Because even while moving, he was just in the details. I actually have the list on my phone of everything that we had to sell in a specific time frame in order to be able to move. I mean, we had to sell like an RV and a car and just crazy things. And God just kept making it happen for us in miraculous ways. And then even having a place to stay for a couple weeks between our house being listed. And I mean, everything, God just handed it all to us. Down to the night before we were going to leave, when I had a friend over and I was like, I don't know what I'm going to feed my kids for breakfast because it's going to be too early to make anything. And there's nothing between here and, for several hundred miles. You either eat in Idaho Falls or you don't eat for a while, depending on where you're going. So literally a few minutes later, I have another friend that texts me and she's like, I was just thinking about you. I would love to bring you guys donuts for breakfast. I'm on my way. It was amazing. And then we're moving. What I didn't understand was tornado season. So we're driving through Kansas and we get into this it was a really scary storm. It was the biggest storm I had ever seen as like a West Coaster. So that was terrifying to me. And I'm like praying and we're listening to the Bible in the car. And I have this radar app on my phone that shows me where the weather system is. And I cannot even stress to you enough that every time we would get to that spot, the storm literally had just this hole that we were driving in and literally protected us the entire time. It was wild. There's no way that we should have been able to go through that storm.
That's amazing.
It was incredible.
You know what? It's crazy because I thought that I had prayers like answered earlier in my life, but now that I look back, I'm like, that actually probably maybe was just a coincidence. But now I can see how prayers are actually so specifically answered.
Yeah.
And it really changes your point of view of God.
Yeah,
And
no.
your understanding of his nature.
He very clearly made it known to us that we were going to be buying a home in Oklahoma without having sold our home in Idaho, which is absolutely terrifying financially, and especially with my husband who does not take financial risks. That is not his thing. So he's like a Dave Ramsey A+ student. He pulled into Tulsa. We weren't even at our new house yet. And we pull into the city and I get a phone call and a realtor's like, you have two offers. One of them is cash full price and they want to waive the inspection. Like, I'm sorry, what did you just say to me?
Yeah, you didn't even tell me that. That's amazing.
It was incredible. We got way more money than we thought we were going to, which ended up being such a blessing because very shortly after, my husband he decided to quit his job for the summer because the job had become extremely toxic, and that's a whole nother trail. But even that extra money that we got from that house went towards our expenses for the summer. I mean, just God's provision is absolutely incredible. I just like live knowing that he's going to take care of me. And it's so different from my life as a Mormon where everything is on my shoulders.
And he'll take care of you without you doing anything but loving and believing in him.
Yeah.
Which is, you don't have to be worthy. It's just a different relationship when you know that he just loves you because he loves you and not because you're living up to a really high standard.
My whole life, I never felt like I was living up to what I was supposed to. I was always having a hard time in childhood and even in my adulthood with feeling worthy and feeling like I was doing the right things and not sinning and, like forgetting to ask for repentance for a specific sin, and just everything is on your shoulders, and my children and their salvation, and none of that is true. It's all God.
Yeah, that's all God. He's so good.
It sounds
We
too
could
easy,
just say that
right?
for an hour.
He's so good.
That's what we say every time. He's just so good.
But it really is life changing.
It
The gospel
is.
is incredible. The God of the universe comes down as the lowliest human and takes on my sin, and he just gives it to me as a gift. And when you hear this as a Mormon, and that sounds like cheap grace, right? I just get to say this prayer and God is going to save me, but that is really not it. God saved me, and I didn't deserve it. I still don't deserve it. If I got what I deserved, I would be in hell. And that's actually what we deserve. We would be up on the cross, because that is what we deserve. We deserve to rot. There is no good in me. All of my good works are filthy rags. And having learned that is just the most incredible thing, that I have a God so good that he would love me. And that makes me love him, which makes me incapable of not loving other people, because I am loved when I don't deserve it. So why would I not want to do that for other people?
It makes you a better person because you're so grateful for his goodness that you're like, I can't live any other way than just try to be better. It's not that you have to prove that you're better or that you have to be better in order to get that. It's just that it makes you want to be better.
Yeah, I'm not checking off my boxes, and I did this, and I did Relief Society, and then I did my visiting teaching, and I did all the right things, and I went to the temple. It's none of that. I'm literally just, I want to go help other people. That's the whole point of this podcast. I'm like messaging you. I feel like we need to do something. We just really need to reach out, because we have so much love for these people, and we want them to hear what we've heard.
Yeah, we wanted to be the bridge. And it's so funny how God created a moment for us who we had both been feeling separately that maybe we should do something, and we were like avoiding talking to each other because we kept coming up with excuses.
Yeah.
And then there's just in one moment we were like, "Hey, we have to do it."
Yeah.
We just both it just happened all at once, and we are very excited to share the gospel, and hopefully we can be a bridge even if people don't really want to listen to us. I think it will help just give more perspective to maybe active believing members on what it's like to actually leave and the differences. And I hope it can bring a little bit more unity, even if it doesn't do what we would obviously be hoping it would do.
People have never asked me what I believe now. I don't have anybody coming up, especially Mormon friends, whatever, family. None of them have asked me what I believe. They just know that I've left. And so in their mind, I'm just apostate and whatever, I have these excuses. But we want this to be where you can sit and listen and actually understand that this wasn't just, she just really wanted to drink coffee, or whatever it is, or they're having marital problems, or one of them has a pornography problem. Like, just the rumors fly when you leave the church, and it's an extremely hurtful thing to assume that you're leaving the church because of some kind of sin in your life. I was always told that growing up. If they left the church, it's because there's some hidden sin in their life, and that really wasn't it. I was not expecting to leave the church. Clearly, by my whole year of trying to figure out a way to defend it. So at least I hope that people, if they've listened this long, I really hope that they just hear that we're not out to get them. We're not out to get their religion. We've actually found the source of truth. I did not become like some rainbow-haired crazy person who hates God. That's not at all what I did. And I don't think people know what to do with that. It's really easy when someone becomes an atheist, like, look at the fruit of their life or whatever. But that's not what we did. And so I think it confuses people, and they don't ask questions. They just avoid it because it goes against what they're taught.
I remember saying this to my mom when I found out that you had left. And I was like, I look back like, what was I thinking? But I was like, I just can't imagine why she would leave for less truth.
I heard that a lot. Yep, we just have more truth than you. Yep, I heard that one.
Exactly. That's the thought. And I think it's important to look at what we believe and see if that actually lines up with reality.
Yeah, that's that's accurate. You would just think that, we left because we wanted to do some kind of secret sin or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
But if I actually thought that, coffee was from the devil, then I wouldn't be drinking it. So that's not actually
Yeah,
why
in
I
fact, you
left.
and I we're like more staunch in our beliefs actually, because we feel very convicted in them now.
Yeah, and we've done a lot of studying.
We are not lazy learners by any means.
No, and this was not an emotionally driven decision either. It very
Mm-mm.
much was methodical and thought out and studied and prayed over, and it had nothing to do with just being emotional, which I'm sure people have said about me too.
I don't know. I mean, I haven't heard that, but
I don't think they're talking to you about it anymore either.
that is true. That's a fair point.
But no, it definitely there's cognitive dissonance because what do you do with someone who left and my marriage is better than ever, my own mental health is better than ever, my children are thriving. I don't People don't know what to do with that. You leave the church and you get divorced or you live a life of sin, and I feel like I actually enjoy following the rules. I enjoy following the commandments, keeping the commandments and reading my Bible. Like I genuinely enjoy that. It's my whole personality at this point. I mean, I have all of these Bibles and commentaries, and when I'm listening to podcasts, I'm listening to Christian podcasts and, digging into the history of the Bible. And at night, I'm watching Wes Huff while I crochet and listening to worship music. We're at church like 3 nights a week. There's just,
You, you heathen.
I
Yeah.
know. Well,
No,
I have my latte in the morning, so.
I mean, I just don't know. Like, so much worse than those monsters.
I know. Well, like, what do you do with that as a Mormon? That's a difficult thing to ask because it's confusing.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, because it challenges your beliefs about other faith. So it's hard. And I think any good conversation between even just the umbrella terms of Mormons and Christians is really important because, especially on social media, like there is a war going on between Mormons and Christians. And I just think it's important to love people the way that God calls us to love people. And you cannot have a good relationship if you cannot have a discussion. And having good discussions means you have to be able to ask questions and listen to the people. So I think this, for us, is partially just a way to have people listen in a way that doesn't feel confrontational and doesn't make them defensive because we're not talking with you. We're not attacking anything. We're sharing our experience and our beliefs.
Yep.
So.
Yeah. You don't have to have your guard up for this.
All right. So now you're in Oklahoma and you're next Mormon.
Yeah. And now it's actually really great to live somewhere where that's not my title anymore.
Yeah. Yes, because now your personality is Jesus.
Exactly. And nobody has to know our history. I'm actually not ashamed of my history, but it is difficult to live in a highly Mormon community when your neighbors all think of you as like a heathen ex-Mormon and your Christian body thinks of you as a baby naive Christian.
Ain't that the truth? All right. Well, we will close out on this one. We will be doing my experience, my testimony in our fourth episode is going to be my story. So you'll have to chug through a few episodes to get mine. Well, we are so excited to go on this podcast journey with all of you, and we hope that you will get out your Bible and taste and see that the Lord is good.